When Friedrich Nietzsche wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how," he was not offering encouragement to future generations. He was writing at the end of the 19th century, in a Europe undergoing profound transformation. Industrialization was reshaping cities. Scientific progress was challenging religious belief. Nationalism was rising, and traditional moral frameworks that had structured European society for centuries were beginning to fracture. Nietzsche was born in 1844 in the Kingdom of Prussia. His father was a Lutheran pastor. Religion defined his early life, but by his 20s, Nietzsche had abandoned Christian faith and begun developing a radical critique of European morality. By the 1870s and 1880s, Europe was entering what historians now describe as a crisis of belief. Charles Darwin's theory of evolution had shaken theological certainty. Biblical criticism was undermining scriptural authority. Rapid industrial growth was producing alienation in expanding urban populations. For Nietzsche, the collapse of religious certainty created a dangerous vacuum. He believed that European society had relied on Christian morality as a foundation for meaning. If that foundation eroded, what would replace it? The quote, often translated as, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how," appears in Twilight of the Idols, written in 1888, the final year of Nietzsche's productive life. The full line reads, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Man does not strive for happiness, only the Englishman does that." The statement reflects Nietzsche's rejection of comfort as life's central aim. He believed suffering was inevitable. The question was not how to eliminate hardship. It was whether one possessed a purpose strong enough to endure it. This idea did not emerge from abstraction. By the time Nietzsche wrote these words, his own life was defined by isolation and illness. He suffered from severe migraines, deteriorating eyesight, digestive disorders, and chronic pain. He had resigned from his university position at Basel due to failing health. He lived largely alone, moving between boarding houses in Switzerland and Italy. His books sold poorly. His ideas were widely ignored. He had few close relationships. In 1889, only months after completing Twilight of the Idols, Nietzsche suffered a mental collapse in Turin. He would spend the remaining 11 years of his life incapacitated under the care of his mother and later his sister. When he wrote about enduring the how of existence, he was writing from personal experience. But the historical impact of the line would extend far beyond Nietzsche's own life. In the 20th century, Europe entered another, far more catastrophic crisis. 2 world wars devastated the continent. Totalitarian regimes rose. The Holocaust exposed the capacity for industrialized extermination. It was in this context that Austrian psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps, reflected on Nietzsche's words. Frankl later wrote in Man's Search for Meaning that those who could identify a purpose, whether reunion with loved ones, unfinished work, or spiritual conviction, were more likely to endure the brutal conditions of camp life. He directly cited Nietzsche's formulation. The quote thus bridged 2 eras of European crisis. For Nietzsche, it addressed the collapse of religious certainty in the 19th century. For Frankl, it described psychological survival under totalitarian violence in the 20th. Historically, the statement does not promise relief. It does not deny suffering. It does not offer optimism. Instead, it asserts that endurance depends upon orientation toward meaning. In Nietzsche's broader philosophy, this idea connects to what he later called the will to power, not domination over others, but the capacity to shape oneself through struggle. He believed that cultures, like individuals, must create values strong enough to withstand upheaval. Without a why, societies drift toward nihilism. Without a framework of meaning, suffering becomes intolerable. Nietzsche did not live to see the full consequences of the cultural transformations he analyzed. He died in 1900, unaware that his writings would later be selectively misused, politicized, and appropriated in the turbulent decades that followed. Yet the line from Twilight of the Idols endured. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. It emerged from a Europe wrestling with modernity. It was tested in the darkest chapters of the 20th century, and it remains tied to the historical question that concerned Nietzsche most. What sustains human beings when inherited systems of meaning collapse? For Nietzsche, the answer was not comfort, it was purpose.